Once upon a time, I was in charge of application engineering, marketing, sales, and project management for a company that built specialty machines, mostly automated assembly machines. Also, we got into laser work with laser welding and cladding, kind of a simple form of 3D printing long before that was ever thought of. And a few other things we did was assembly and then test, especially with helium mass spectrometry leak testing. One of the things I learned was building machines to spec was a good way to lose money. And in fact, we lost quite a bit of money in that company, and therefore I went on to other things. But this is Gary, and this is Gary on manufacturing, and I wanted to talk a little bit about strategies and finding ways to get business or improve business or help your customers out more. This podcast is brought to you with support from Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new view with Ignition 8 by Inductive Automation, packed with features for the modern control system like unlimited licensing, high-powered tags, and a mobile-first flexible design environment for all devices. Ignition 8 supports enterprises of any size. See all Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. And I thank the fine folks at Inductive Automation for continuing to support my website and this podcast. It's probably been, good God, I bet it's been almost 20 years ago. I was hanging out at a Starbucks in one of the northern suburbs of Chicago. I forget exactly where, Hoffman Estates or Mount Prospect or somewhere up in that way. And just doing some work and some reading and writing and working on my latest gadget at that time, which was a Palm Pilot. So just sitting there minding my own business, a guy beside me said, "Excuse me, could I look at your stylus?" I said, "Sure." So I handed the stylus over to him, and he took a look at it, and he muttered some interesting words I'm not going to use here. And he said, "I quoted this job to Palm. And the original spec on the stylus was all metal, and he needed to machine, and you probably don't remember it, but it would be, kind of a pen-like, but a little bit on the end, had a kind of a little extrusion kind of thing, and it was thin cylindrical. It comes down to almost a point. A stylus. It was supposed to be an all-metal stylus. And he lost the order to a Chinese company. And at that time, we didn't like the Chinese, but as competition. But it's kind of like they were kind of in that realm of cheap foreign stuff. Anyway, he lost it because it was a low bid. And then he looked at the stylus that I had. And the part that would have been the most difficult to machine was plastic. And he said they wouldn't allow plastic. And I'm thinking the Chinese OEM did a better job of selling a better way and cheaper way to make the stylus. He didn't look just at the spec. He said, or they said, we can do this for you. We can do it faster, cheaper, better, and all that stuff, and they got the order. And I've been telling OEMs, machine builders, and SIs ever since I actually got into publishing 20 years ago about what I had experienced in not just accepting, that the lowest bidder always gets it, but maybe you can do something to be better. I run across a new technology and say, have you considered like embedding OPC into this thing and offering this? Or when Internet of Things was new, maybe you could do this and this and this, have a value add. Maybe you could get a few more bucks out of the thing, but you've done a better product and service for your customer, which is where you need to think about it. And I got a lot of these ideas when I worked at a company called Airstream, which is mostly known as the premier travel trailers, the silver loaf of bread, if you've seen them on the road. And I worked in a number of places in that company, and I wound up with several years of product development. And I was like the special project guy, among many other things. When you're in a smaller company, you're always in a number of different tasks. But I did a lot of special projects, and one of the special projects was we got into the business of compact buses. Almost all of the sales for compact buses went through some sort of transit authority or some sort of bid process. Now, on the sales side, the game is to try to get in there early and get your particular product, your bus, spec'd. So all the specs are around your bus, and then you have a leg up on getting the contract. If you didn't do that, then what happened is they came to me. And, sales guy said, "I've got this bid. Here's the bid packet," and give me like an inch thick pile of documents or something, and I would go through and do what was called take exception. In other words, I would rewrite the specs and try to sell our bus in place where it said we need this kind of door. I'd say, but we could supply this kind of door, and the reason that this is better. So already early in my career, I was thinking the combination of engineering to marketing to satisfying the customer and yet making a sale. The whole thing has stood me well the rest of my career. But the idea was, and to me to this day, everything's negotiable, as in everything is negotiable. And so you never take no for an answer, or you never say, well, this has been spec'd out and this is the way we're going to go. Or you never let things lie like that. You always take a look at how you could do it better, faster, cheaper, provide a better service, provide a better product, take some cost out, but in a good way, or whatever. And this goes like to this day. Always keep your eyes open. I listened to a podcast. It's actually called The Podcast or The Podcast, and it's a couple of Polish guys who one is the owner and founder of a company called Noseby. That's my Getting Things Done app, if you will. And the other guy on the podcast is Radek, and Radek. They hired, basically, this is Poland. He was kind of still in high school, and he was like a part-time because he knew iOS, and he became kind of the Apple developer for Noseby way back in the day, and he's quite a few years now. And he and the boss started a podcast, and it's The Podcast. And so Roddick's a software developer. He's an iOS guy, an Apple Mac guy, and all that sort of thing. But he got into 3D printing, and he bought a little 3D printer, and I got him into CAD, because you have to do the drawings in CAD to load them into a 3D printer to build something. And he was building trinkets and all kinds of cool stuff. Moved from his town where he was to Warsaw so he could be part of a maker community. And when he got into the maker community, they had access to all kinds of equipment in there. And so he still like chunking out odds and ends of stuff. And then this whole coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 virus, and COVID-19, that whole thing started to hit, and it hit Poland like it probably earlier than it hit us in the U.S. And so he's thinking, Radek, who's this 3D printer guy and CAD guy, got together with his group at the maker community and said, we need to make face masks. They're out of face masks that in the hospitals can't get enough, and we need to help out. And we can 3D print the parts. We can make it up. Over in the other part of the shop, there are some stamping presses, and maybe we can make some dies. And we could, in fact, he didn't really know what a die was, but it was kind of cute because here's a software guy with not really a lot of manufacturing background. And that podcast, I wrote about this on my blog. That podcast was kind of cool because he discovered all the manufacturing stuff. I got to figure out the bill of materials and the parts and how to make the parts, and I got to make a die for the stamping press, and I've got to have to source the materials to get the materials in, and because this is all like pro bono work, how can I get that really cheaply, and then set up a production line where we actually assemble those masks And then when I do that, I have to have a way to uh, distribute it. And he was told even back then, if you remember in the U.S., we had problems with hospital administrators who would actually fire doctors if they complained about not having personal protective equipment. Yeah, that happens. Well, in Poland, he was told, don't go to the hospital administrators. The things will just get lost in a warehouse someplace. Get it to the people who really need it. And what they did was they go to like the major hospitals around Warsaw and different places and find like a nurse or somebody affiliated with that whole thing who could directly get these PPEs to the people that needed them. So it was the whole supply chain. It's the whole value chain actually, from sourcing materials to final distribution and making them. And it's a great podcast, and I'll link to it again. But it's very interesting to listen to that. And that's another example of somebody making a manufacturing line. But in this case, it was like free, and he was always out wheeling around. But these are innovative ideas, and the idea is the Chinese people were very innovative in the way they presented a better product, better, not necessarily in a sense of totally machine metal, but economical, works well, meets all the requirements of the product, and actually then does other things. Or what I was doing at Airstream, which helped our sales department sell more compact buses, which was good for us because this was back at a time when it was hard to sell travel trailers. The gas prices were exorbitant, and interest rates were high, and we were looking for ways to make money aside from recreation vehicles. And then we've got Rodek and his stuff. And so the challenge in this time is, we're getting supplies of masks and stuff, but that's still a problem. It's still a way you could contribute. But there are other ways you could contribute. There are ways you could contribute and be innovative in hiring and bringing people in, and other things like that. So just open up and don't ever say, oh, it's just gonna go to the lowest bidder and nobody will ever make any money. Figure out a way to make money. There's always almost. I mean, some customers you have to fire, but you know how that goes. But otherwise, always be on the lookout, and don't be afraid to do something new. And then go to the customer and say, hey, I can beat the other people because I have some innovative ideas, and these will help you, Mrs. Customer, as well as the whole chain. So don't stop with just where you were, but keep on going. So anyway, this is Gary on manufacturing. A few thoughts on competitiveness and innovation. Think laterally, read widely, come up with different ideas to combine different things together, and that's called innovation. And take this to your customer. Say, I can give you a better mousetrap, if you will. So this is Gary, and thank you for listening. And remember, this podcast is brought to you with the support from Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new view with Ignition 8 by Inductive Automation, packed with features for the modern control system like unlimited licensing, high-powered tags, and a mobile-first flexible design environment for all devices. Ignition 8 supports enterprises of any size. See all that Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. Check out my blog at themanufacturingconnection.com, and have a nice, safe period of time as we're starting to open up a little bit. Don't go crazy. Keep yourself healthy, and we'll talk to you again later. Thank you for listening.